The SPY now turns to the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both President Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good afternoon, folks. Let's get started. I kind of had this feeling that Bob Woodward's book would be leaked early. It's pretty extraordinary, isn't it?
Honestly, it kind of goes beyond what my expectations might have been for what was in this book. I think it is going to come out as a very important book. It's not released until next week. Bob Woodward is somebody that I have gotten to know well over the years, really first interacted with him when I was Chief of Staff to Vice President Bush. Originally he's trained as an intelligence officer. You take that background, you take exceptional intellect, and then you take a huge measure of concern about the way voters become informed about presidential candidates. And it's a formula for the kind of inside look that I guess we're going to get into what Donald Trump thinks from time to time. My conversations back in the 80s with Bob Woodward went to the fact that the campaigning really didn't reveal the ultimate truth about an individual, and that you needed to probe more deeply. And so he's been at that for a long time. I think what's probably sort of remarkable to me is that Donald Trump could believe he could do hours and multiple interviews with Bob Woodward and come out of this looking balanced. He looks rather unbalanced. And I think what Bob Woodward is doing is what he's done so well before, and that is before the book comes out, excerpts in the Washington Post begin appearing. In this case, though, they're including the audio tape from these interviews, which is a message to President Trump and anybody who wishes to support him. Don't challenge what's being reported and what was said, because we have the tape. And it's going to be daunting. And at another level, the relationships among the people who clearly are sources, the revelations about what people truly think behind his back are going to create a chilling effect in the White House. Most of all, I think Bob Woodward is going to do what Bob Woodward wants to do, and that is peel back the layers and reveal, sort of the soul of an individual who's seeking the presidency. He's telling Bob Woodward one thing, and he doesn't mind misleading the American people on the topic of the COVID virus. But yeah, it's going to be pretty explosive, I think, when the book comes out next week.
Al?
Well, I guess, Trump thinks he's the smartest man in the world, so Bob Woodward's no threat to him. My immediate thought is how disingenuous he is. We all knew it. He couldn't really be as dumb as he appears, with the way he played down such an important, the greatest national security threat that our country's had since World War II, and he just sort of passed it off. You think he was smarter than that, and now he's basically admitting it. He's already had marks that are so low on his handling of COVID. This has got to, drive it even more. And then you go down and you go through all the other things about his attitudes toward race that he talks to Woodward about. What other people in the administration say, how all of the little sycophants that run around him were astonished that Dr. Fauci would tell him the truth during one of the meetings on COVID. What a terrible picture of the White House. And if there's any doubt that he shouldn't be in that job, he tried to erase it. And as Craig said, the most important thing, it's all in his own words. He's not going to be able to hide it the way I mean, we've seen, I guess, in the way he's handled Senator McCain and other things, that he doesn't mind lying, and he can have something on tape that he said the day before, deny he ever said it. But this one, I think, may be a little more damaging. But we say that every time.
Hey, Dave, this, in a way, this takes me back, I don't know, others will make the comparison, but it takes me back to the Nixon years and days when those who supported him, like George Herbert Walker Bush, who was party chairman, discovered that in fact, they really had been misled, that they were defending something that was indefensible. I think this is what's going to happen to Donald Trump. The people around him who have tried mightily, for whatever reason, to put a good spin on things, are literally, when this book comes out, left with trying to defend the indefensible. He, in his own words, he says he knows this is a deadly and dangerous pandemic to Bob Woodward, but to the rest of us, he says, we got it under control. We're doing a great job. And I think that, I don't know how many wheels are on this vehicle, but the wheels are coming off in the next few days. And I don't know how, he sustains this. I'm sure he'll make every effort to.
The comparison to Nixon is interesting because it's also Woodward who, with his partner Carl Bernstein, who brought Nixon down in their great book, All the President's Men, but their reporting in the Post really exposed Watergate. But Craig, I think it even goes further than Nixon. I mean, George Bush and a lot of decent people who supported Nixon may have suspected that the things were true, but they didn't really know. And then the tapes were this incredible evidence. We all know that Trump, that Trump is who he is. And maybe this will be the straw that breaks the camel's back with Mitch McConnell or a couple of other Republican senators. But if it is, it's probably only, for their own preservation as opposed to because they've really discovered something new.
Maybe now it's old news, but only a couple of days ago, we were confronted with another disclosure where the president had made some very disparaging words about those serving in the military, particularly in leadership positions. And it may be a repetition of what we've just talked about, but in this case, the sources have not become public. Al, let me stick with you on this. I mean, do you feel like if, for example, Kelly came out next week, it would have impact?
The one thing about Trump, he gets stories from the best and most reputable of journalists. And Jeffrey Goldberg is one of the great journalists of our time who wrote this story. Maybe it adds a little bit if Kelly comes out, but does anybody doubt what he reported is true? I certainly didn't. I mean, it's completely in kind with everything Trump said. We know what he said publicly about a Gold Star family. We know what he said about Senator McCain. So it's not really a stretch for him to say this about everybody. We know how he thinks about the military because of the way he behaved. The amount of political damage that each one of these revelations has, the Woodward thing may be a little bit more, but is probably not enormous in themselves, but there's a cumulative impact. It's not like Trump won by 35% last time and he has a large margin of error. In most states, if he loses half a point, or most battleground states, he's going to be a dead turkey. And so I think we've already seen the impact. I mean, I saw a spate of polls that came out in the last couple of days on the battleground states and nationally, and he's getting clobbered on suburban voters, which he won last time. college graduates. I mean, I think every time he does one of these things, it says, how can anybody who's a college graduate really think that they're going to support this guy? And women, and even seniors. And there was even a poll before all of this that showed that among military, for the first time, the Republican Trump was behind. Now it was 41-37, so there's a lot of undecided, and in the end, it may not turn out that way. But he was already in trouble with the military before those remarks. And as I said, everybody knows it's true. The damage will probably be part of cumulative damage. But the overall impact is that it's going to cost him big in the election.
To Craig on this,
I've had a feeling that a number of people are probably waiting. They know this is going to be a torturous process, and they didn't want to go through it too early. So let's hold our fire until we get closer to the November election. At this stage, again, I don't want to put too much into a book we have not yet seen in total, but Kelly and the former Secretary of Defense and others, I'm not sure they have to do too much. Donald Trump, in his own words, is demonstrating his character or lack thereof, and probably exposing himself in a way that would demonstrate better than anything John Kelly could say what he was faced with day in and day out as Chief of Staff. I do think it makes, I agree totally with Al, I think there's a cumulative impact here. I also think it makes, the book makes denials much less credible. It's clear that the president will say what he feels he needs to say anytime, anywhere. So I think these stories will probably have greater validity. I would also say, in my experience, and I'm pretty sure it's true for Al, if it's getting this hot in September, it's going to get really hot when we get into mid-October. This is not the end of this. There's more to come, and buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride.
Staying with you, Craig. I mean, talk about the surreal lives we are living. It's been reported that the Trump campaign has spent $800 million before Labor Day. And that the president's campaign is dealing with a major financial crisis. I mean, how do you think that's going to play out?
Remarkable report, borrowing from the discussion we've just had. I'm not sure how much of it we can truly believe. Saying that you're running low on money is a trusted means by which to raise more money. And on the other hand, I'm sure they were shocked in the finance office when the president said, I'll just add 100 million to my campaign. Because that does not exactly bring donors to you. Look, there's nothing that would suggest that a Donald Trump operation is going to be well run and well managed. Husbanding your resources, I don't care how much you have, until after the conventions is kind of critical at this point in time. And high sums of money need to be spent. He's got lots to counter. If in fact they have less than is desirable, it really is a sign that this wasn't being well run. I suspect when things are written, there's more money available and on its way in than they're acknowledging. I will say there was another story, however, about the way the money was spent, and I think upwards of 50 million is being spent on legal issues, multiple times more than what other organizations have spent. And so you also have to wonder, not only was that number 800 million fairly large, but are they spending it on things that traditionally have not been run through your campaign organization? So we'll see.
Al?
I'm not surprised in any of this. I mean, he ran all his businesses into the ground, and he skimmed everything he could on top for himself, and then he declared bankruptcy a gazillion times. So it's just the way he operates. I mean, they've used the thing about the Times report was that it wasn't just talking to people. They went through the records, the campaign records, and it's clear that the Trump mafia uses, and I use that word not so advisedly, uses the campaign money as a piggy bank. Brad Parcell, the former campaign manager, has his fancy cars and his big salaries. Millions of dollars went to Trump properties. So I suspect as we get into the key part of the campaign, there are probably 3 or 4 ways that this will have impact. One, we've already seen it. Use of the White House for things that you'd ordinarily pay for by the campaign, which is probably pretty illegal, but the Republican National Convention of the White House probably indicates that they didn't want to spend a lot on other sources. The second, I'm not sure that I agree with Craig. I think the donors are going to dry up. I think they're going to say, screw you. We give you all this money, you just waste it. Why should I give you more? Third, it's going to obviously impact the advertising and television budget, and it already has in a lot of the battleground states. They were off the air for in some of the battleground states for a while. They're coming back now, I gather. But the most important thing is the point Craig made. There's no money for damage control. You got a human wrecking ball in the White House. Every day he's causing more damage. And, a lot of that money is probably gone to, would have to go to damage control, and they're probably not going to have it. There's one other point that I thought was really fascinating. There's a story, it's not, it was I read it in the Times and the Post, but it's a national story of the Justice Department going to court at the insistence of the White House to try to pick up legal fees for a defamation of character suit by somebody who claimed that Trump raped her in 1999, which seems to be a little bit before he was president. And, that may be another indication that they're a little tight on their money, both for campaigns and for potential Trump defense funds. But in any event, this can't be good news for them. But it's completely in character with everything we've talked about today.
Well, I'm sorry it's been kind of a slow news week, but thank you all. I'll see you next time.